So this is the first watch I've ever handled where the effective lug to lug is about 10 millimeters slimmer than the actual case size. Hey guys, it's Alex with Hammond Watch. Here today with the SBDX014. And a big thank you goes to Jewelry Works in Gainesville, Florida. They're my local authorized dealer and lent the watch in for us to have a bit of a quicker look at. If you ever will need anything Seiko, I've got their contact details below. David, the owner, is phenomenal to deal with. But this watch has a few different nicknames. The Rose Gold Tuna, it's also called the Emperor Tuna Titanium. It's a member of Seiko's Marine Master lineup, which is their kind of top tier dive watches and some of the more robust pieces that they put out onto the market. It's got a really interesting design. I've always been a big fan of this tuna kind of lugless shape where, you know, no matter where you measure the case, you're getting the same 52.4 millimeters. While a lot of that is this scratch resistant ceramic shroud, you certainly feel every bit of that 52 millimeters. It's not a watch that has a deep kind of in cut. I mean, there's a little bit of tapering as you go to the underside of the case, but make no mistake, it wears incredibly chunky. You're looking at just over 17 millimeters thick. You've got a nice signed 8 millimeter crown, and probably the most interesting thing on the watch, for me at least, you know, every time I tried to look up a lug to lug on this, I saw 52.4. And while technically, yes, the case kind of north to south is that, the effective lug to lug, like if you get in and actually measure the lug holes are just beyond here, it's 41.25. So a full, 10 millimeters inward from the outside of the case. Helps make it more wearable, but at the same time, I never really noticed or seen a watch that boasted that kind of sizing. Coming out of that 22 millimeter lug is one of Seiko's silicone straps. I think these are great, thick enough to hold a big burly watch like this in place, but pliable enough to be incredibly comfortable for everyday wear. These keepers that they're using on most of their dive watches now, I think look great. Love the polished edge. I will say on this particular model, I'm a little disappointed in the buckle. I've seen much nicer buckles on their lower end watches. While I understand that this is certainly more of a tool watch than others, it does come off and feel just a little bit cheap when you consider everything else involved with this package. While the handset and dial are very typical of the Seiko Tuna, I'm a huge fan of this color scheme. Not just for the styling you get as far as having the rose gold hands and bezel, but I really like the color match text. There's a fair amount of printing on the dial of these, and it really helps it to kind of fade away, being that kind of darker rose tone against a really matte dial, and does a great job of just allowing the indices to do their work. As you'd expect from any Seiko diver, the luminescence is wonderfully executed, although I must say their watches at this kind of caliber really go a step above. Extra potent, super long lasting. That's just printing on the dial, but there's just clearly heaps and heaps of lume used in the application, and I think it looks phenomenal. The case back is where this watch gets really interesting. You'll notice to the right 8L35 referencing this watch's movement. That particular movement is based on the 9S55. That's a Grand Seiko caliber, which is phenomenal build quality and a 50-hour power reserve. At the top, you'll see Helium Gas Divers 1000. And that's probably the coolest feature of the watch. There is no helium escape valve, but this watch is absolutely suitable for saturation diving. Most of that being because it's a monoblock case design. You'll notice that there are no points for screwing the case back in. That's because the case is one solid piece of titanium, meaning the handset, dial, movement, everything during assembly has to go in through the front of the watch where it's capped off with a sapphire crystal. Below that you'll see stainless steel, ceramic, and titanium referencing the materials used. I think I said it earlier, but this shroud is an extremely scratch resistant ceramic. tons of titanium, including all of this rose gold plated hardware. And then there's stainless steel components on the inner workings of the watch, obviously. So here's the watch on my 7.5 to 7 3/4 inch wrist. And look, I'm not trying to say that it's not an enormous watch, but for 52 plus millimeters, it wears pretty small. The use of titanium and ceramic kind of keep that weight down as well, and you have to accept that form follows function to a certain degree. Now 17 millimeters thick isn't going to be for everybody, but at the same time, given today's just current watch sizing standards, I don't think this is going to be out of place. You know, I think this would be at home with a t-shirt the same way it would be at home over a wetsuit. So these watches retail at $3,300, but I really do think that you're getting what you pay for. You have excellent materials with titanium and ceramic throughout the watch. You have a really cool design with this monoblock case, a Grand Seiko based movement, some of the best luminescence you can get in the business, sapphire crystal. This 120 click bezel is fantastic to operate. There is no play at all, and it's very firm, but at the same time soft enough that operating it with gloves on it is not going to be an issue at all. The crown is one of my favorite aspects to the watch. Apart from being incredibly grippy, once it's pulled out, I don't know how they're anchoring it into the case, but it feels like you could hammer a nail with the side of this thing. There's no play, no wiggle at all. It winds buttery smooth, and the time and date changes are just phenomenal to operate. I think as an overall package, it completely warrants the price, and I'm a much bigger fan than I anticipated being of this watch. If you guys enjoyed the video, don't forget to give us a thumbs up. It really helps in YouTube's algorithm. Also consider subscribing, putting out videos weekly, and I'll look forward to seeing you in the next one.